What's up, crafters, and welcome to Cricut Design Studio. My name is Nick, and today we're going to go over everything to do with fonts. What are fonts? Why do I need them? How do I get them? Are they free? Can I use them on merchandise that I sell? We're going to go over all of it, and it's important to know that you can use this guide regardless of which device you use, such as Windows, Mac, iPhone, iPad, Android, what have you, and regardless of what design software that you use, such as Design Space by Cricut, Silhouette Studio, Photoshop, Inkscape, GIMP, etc. Before we get started, please do me a huge favor and click the subscribe button down below. Next to the subscribe button is a bell icon. Make sure that bell icon is turned on so that you'll get notified anytime I release a new video. Thank you for the support. It really helps the channel out. Now, let's get to it. First things first, what you're seeing on the screen is Cricut Design Studio. I've just turned the canvas black and the font white. Just so we see what you're seeing, I'll do the reverse and we'll go black font. So fonts, let's go over what fonts are. Fonts are simply a file that resides on your computer, and that file contains the design of letters and the style details of the letters. Fonts can be free or paid. You can get free ones out there. A font can also contain, the font file, I should say, can also contain certain details about the font, such as the typeface, the point size, the weight, the color, etc. When you buy or obtain a free font, you're just getting a digital file that you have to install onto your computer. Fonts can also come in families, what's called families. Font families are just groups of different styles of the same font. For example, Times New Roman. If you search for Times New Roman, you may find different, this one's only showing a single one, but you may find different styles of the same font. Times New Roman Bold, Times New Roman Bold Italic, Times New Roman Italic, etc. All those contained in the same file are called a font family. Font also comes in two versions, OTF, we'll put this up here, OTF, and TTF. OTF stands for Open Type Font, and TTF stands for True Type Font. True Type Font is fonts that are created by Apple and Microsoft. It's the original style of computer fonts. They're very basic, and it used to be that's all you could get. Now we have what's called Open Type Font. Open Type Font allows you to basically add extra swashes and styles and whatnot to True Type fonts. So it's the evolution of a True Type font. Open Type Font, if you're ever given the option, if you download a font and it has OTF and TTF, install the OTF. That's going to be the one you want. If there's no OTF available, choose True Type Font. Obviously, if OTF is the only one available, then choose OTF. That's going to be really, for what we use it for, that's really going to be the only two. There are other types. There's, I don't know, 4 or 5 other types, but you're really only going to see OTF and TTF. That's really all you need to use. So now to install a font, all you really need to do, actually to use a font, all you really need to do is install it. So right now, if I want, a certain font that I find online, it's not going to be in my list of fonts, regardless of whether I choose all, System, Cricut, or whatever program you're on. It's not going to show there until you install it to your system, and then you'll see it under System Font. So let's go over how to install a font. Let's bring up the site I use and most people use is called dafont.com. DAFONT.com. These are free fonts, but it's important to know that they are free in the sense that you do not pay for them on this site. If you go to the main page, which this is, you'll see different fonts loaded here. You can refresh this page and these will change. But over here on the right, it'll say free for personal use. Pretty much every font you find on here is going to be free for personal use. What that means is exactly what it says. You can use it for free as long as you're using it for personal use. If you want to make yourself a t-shirt or make yourself a poster, you can do that for free with this font. Now, if you want to make a t-shirt to sell to somebody, that's not included in this free for personal use. You would need to find one that says free for personal or commercial use. Now, if you go into, for instance, this Valentine font, if we go into here, this can get really complicated. There's always going to be a note from the author that will tell you the licensing. So for this one, this demo font is for personal use only. You can purchase a commercial license here, and then they also have commercial extended business, and you can look into all that. If you were to click on here, this is going to open another site where you can then purchase, in this instance for $18, you can purchase this font, which will allow you to use it for more than just personal use. Now, a lot of them, if you purchase the font, it's yours. You can do whatever you want with it. This one is a little more complicated. There's different types of licenses, and based on what type you select, it's going to restrict or allow what you can do within that license. For instance, for a standard license for $18, it's good for one user, 2 computers, unlimited personal and commercial projects. So I can use it for whatever I want for commercial. I can sell products, but I can only install it on 2 computers and only for me. I can use it for print merchandise sale for up to 10,000 prints, digital ads for 10,000. You get the idea. Websites for 10,000 views a month. So if I'm going beyond that, and then I need a different license of what they offer. I may not use for cinema. I can't make a movie out of it, or I can't use the font in a movie. I can't embed the font into a game. I can't trademark a logo without their permission if it uses this font. So, if I want to go corporate, that's $2,500. That's going to let me do whatever I want to do with it. Digital ads, webfront, you can choose what you want. Most of them aren't this complicated. Most of them are just, it's a standard license or it's a free license. But the idea is make sure you know what the license is on the font before you use it, especially for commercial sales. Okay, now that that's out of the way, that's the important part. Very important. You don't want to get sued. Let's go over how to install the fonts. So Valentine, I like this. I like this font here. Okay. Right now I'm running Windows 10. Okay. So to install this on a Windows device, and I'll go over after Windows, I'll go over Mac and Android and iPhone. To install this on Windows, it's pretty simple. Just click the download button. Okay. It tells me I'm using Google Chrome for my web browser, but it's a similar process regardless of which browser you use, okay? I'm either going to click this or I'm going to go to my downloads folder and I'm going to find it. But once I click it, it's going to open. Now for this one, I only have an open type font. So that's going to be the one I install. If it gave me that and true type, I'll just install the open type font. That's the main one that you want. That's going to give you the fancy swirls and all that stuff. Okay. To install it, I don't even have to extract it when I'm in Windows. This is a zip file. It's a compressed file. I don't have to worry about extracting it in Windows. I can just double click this and it's going to bring this up. This gives me a preview of what the font looks like in different sizes and what the letters and numbers each look like. Okay. To install this is how easy it is. Just literally click install. Okay, I'm going to get, showed up on my other screen, but it said installing font and then it went away. Once it goes away, it's installed. And I won't be able to click it again because it's already installed. So if I now go back to Design Space, and the one that I just installed is called Valentine. So if I go to all and search Valentine, it's not there. The reason it's not there is because when you open Design Space and many other programs, it loads whatever fonts you have installed on your computer right when you launch the program. So since I installed that font after I launched the program, it doesn't show up. So if I want it to show up in my list, what I have to do is close the program, go over to my other screen here, open it again, literally do nothing else, close it and open it again, and get a new project open here. And now if I type in all about fonts, okay, and go up here and search Valentine, there it is. So what's best to do is have your editing program, whether it be Design Space or Silhouette, or if you're using an imaging program like Photoshop, have it closed and then install the font and then open it again. But it doesn't really matter. If it's open when you install it, you'll just have to close the program and reopen it for it to show in your files. Now for this one, I went over this in the Cricut, in the first video, the Cricut, how to use Cricut Design Space. If you look on the website, see how that flows all together nicely? It's almost like cursive writing. In Design Space, it's not like that. That's because of the letter spacing. We need to reduce the letter spacing until they're all touching. And in certain cases, you may also have to ungroup these and slide them over. Like, let's go to negative. See how it's getting the B and the O are getting too close together, but yet these are still apart. In that case, I'm going to have to ungroup them and regroup them. Ungroup them, slide them over to where they're supposed to be, and regroup them. So that covers Windows. On Mac, I actually do have a Mac, but I don't have it hooked up right now. I have a MacBook. But in Mac, the process is the same. You literally will download the file, which will download it into a zipped folder. Go to that folder and unpack the zipped. You have to unpack the zipped file. Go to wherever you unpacked it, wherever, when you extracted it, and double click on the OTF file and then click the install button. Very similar process. It's just you have to actually go to the folder instead of Windows where you can just double click it, which actually I did go to the folder. This would be the folder, except instead of just clicking it from here, you have to extract it or unpack it when you're on the Mac. Okay, so one other thing we want to mention is if we go to, let's say, Etsy, and with Etsy, we search for, any kind of SVG. Let me see if I can find one here. So any of these. Let's say this one here. Okay, so it's $1. See how it's got the writing on it? When you download this SVG, you are not installing the font that's in this SVG. Now it may come with an SVG file that says font. Most of them just have an SVG file and it's the entire picture. You're not installing this font. So that's important to remember when you're looking for SVGs. If you find one and you're like, oh, I really like that, that writing, you're not going to get that writing from this SVG. The SVG is simply a picture that's split into parts. So if you get an SVG, for instance, these here, this one shows it pretty good. This is this picture split into these two parts. Okay, this one is this picture split in. So when you load this into Design Space or whatever software you're using, if you use the SVG, it's going to show as two separate layers within Design Space. You're going to have the layer of the black and you're going to have the layer of the color. You can use whichever one you want. But if these designs, I'm trying to find one that's got color and writing. These ones all have color and writing. Okay, so the writing is going to be, it's not going to be a text field in Design Space. It's going to be a picture. So if you want a font, you have to download the OTF or the TTF font. Now let's go over, I'm going to go back to defont.com. We're going to go to the main page. And I want to go over all of the different types of fonts. So if you're looking in here, you can see that they categorize them as fancy, foreign look, techno, bitmap, gothic, basic, script, dingbats, holiday. Fonts come in a bunch of different styles. There's hand-drawn, which if you look in script handwritten, this is similar to hand-drawn. Hand-drawn fonts are literally drawn by hand into the computer. They add a personal touch, but they are imperfect. So you may see if you download some hand-drawn fonts that there's imperfections in them. They're meant to be that way. They're meant to look like you literally drew them by hand. The next one is script, which script covers a whole different category here in DeFont. Script is basically any fonts that, when I think script, I think calligraphy or old school, but they are basically, they have fluid strokes. They're a lot like hand-drawn, but they don't have imperfections. They tend to be perfect in design. You'll see a lot of these on invites, especially for brush and old school. Not so much brush, old school. You'll see a lot of scripting. You know, it's the real fancy. You'll see them on wedding invitations and such. Birthday invitations is where you'll see scripting. There's ones called display. I don't think they break them down in here into display. Display fonts are very bold. Like they're meant to draw attention to the title or headline or whatever you're using it for. That's pretty much it for display. If you want, let's say you're writing a document and you want a nice headline that's going to draw people's attention right to that, that's when you're going to use display type fonts. The next two are serif and sans serif. That's these here. Serif fonts are a lot like display fonts. They're very bold, very clean. There's not too much fanciness with them. They're meant to draw your eye to it and basically just get your point to it. It's not supposed to look fancy. Serif fonts are simple, but serif fonts are simple, but they, how do I describe it? They have like a little mark. Like see these here on the X's? These are called serifs. They have little marks or little strokes that are called serifs. Okay. if you, they're supposed to make them easier to read. See the G here on Vogue has that little notch, and the E's. These are serifs, okay? If we go to sans serif, which literally means not, it doesn't have serifs, no serifs. These are very, I shouldn't have said bold for the serifs. These are very bold. These are a lot like displays. Very straight to the point. You don't see any of the serifs on the end of any of the letters. Okay, you might have the curves like this, but you don't see the serifs. They're simple. They're straight lines. There's no marks. There's no strokes. Straight to the point. Next thing I want to go over is we went to licensing. In Design Space. I wanted to cover this real quick. We're almost done here. In Design Space, let's say I create a new text, and I'm going to call it, this is test font. Okay. I'm going to leave it in the Valentine that we installed earlier. Okay. I can choose regular bold italic or bold italic. That's part of the family. Not all fonts will have this. Some of them will only have bold or only have regular. Some won't have any italic bold. It'll just have regular. You can change your font size by either dragging this. Right now I'm at 93.52. If I go down, now I'm at 57. Or I can just play with the numbers here. You can actually input these numbers if you want. But I can hit the arrows and I can go big or small. So I want to make it a little bit bigger so I can see it here. I talked earlier about how the spacing isn't right. So we need to go letter spacing, and we need to bring it down so that they're closer together. Okay. Now, this looks okay. What I don't like is, pay attention to right here, the I and the S, as opposed to this right here. Okay. As I go down, the I and the S and is gets closer. Now right there is almost perfect. Okay. But I still have a lot of space in here. If I continue going down below 0.1, I'd say actually 0 looks almost perfect. Okay. Now see how they start mashing together? Now the I and the S are going into together. I don't want that. So if let's keep it at 0. Okay. Now this is what I was talking about earlier. The E and the S here are not connected. The O and the N, the T, these are not connected. So in order to get those connected, I'm going to have to ungroup them and move each letter. What's important to know is that as soon as you ungroup these, this is no longer a text field. So I cannot change the font. Make sure you have the font type what you want it, because you won't be able to change it once you ungroup it. And here's what I mean. If I ungroup this, even if I ungroup it, and then what that does is, by the way, so each letter is now its own individual layer over here on the side, okay? If I highlight them all together I didn't do anything, I didn't move anything, and group them back together, this is no longer a text field. I can double click it all I want, but I'm not going to be able to change that. It won't reappear how to change the type of font, or the bold, or italicize it, or anything like that, okay? It treats it more like an image where I can size it, the height, I can rotate it, I can position it. So once you ungroup, it's done. You cannot go back. You can do Control Z or this back arrow back until where it's ungrouped, and now it's back, okay? But you're going to lose the ungrouping format. So if you ungroup it and then you move all the pieces together and then hit back, it's just going to unmove those. It's going to move them back to where they were. So make sure you have your font type. Make sure you have the style the way you want it. Don't worry about font size, because you can always resize it. But your alignment and all that, anything that you want to do with your letters is going to go away once you hit this ungroup over here. Okay, so now one other thing that you can do, which still has its limitations, is if you need to ungroup these and you want to move them closer together, this advanced button right here you can click this and ungroup to letters. So what that's going to do is it's going to essentially do the same thing as ungroup over here. But if you click on each letter, you can still change the font. Okay. You cannot, as far as I know, regroup them other than grouping them together over here. But again, that changes it from being a font file to a more of an image. So let me undo that. Undo that. Okay, so this is to the point where we just ungrouped. Now I can actually move each one, but after I move it, I can still change the font size and the font of each individual one. So if I want, let's say I want this to, for whatever reason, I want it to stand out. I want it to be nice and bold. 84, excuse me? That's not what I clicked. I want this to say T because this, so you might see this in some documents, especially when you're reading books and whatnot. It might have a nice big bold T like that and then the cursive. So that's how you can do this and play with the fonts. And then if I need to, I can highlight these two, move them over just a little bit so those match. Highlight these two. I don't like how much space is in between, so I'm just going to move that over. Now, let me undo that. Now, if I just want to move, let's say the T and the S, see how it moved it too far? I'm going to have to hold, what is it, Shift, and slide it. And holding Shift just makes it so that it sort of stays on the same plane. Now I can select the T, move the T over while holding Shift. Now I can select all three, move them just a little bit closer to the T, and I can now move the whole thing. See how it moved up a little bit on me? Like that, okay? Same thing with that FONT. I can do this however I want, really. I can just take the O, hold Shift, move it a little bit closer, or even let's make it touch the F. The N, I can move over so it's lined up in here. And then the T, like that. Okay, now I can move the whole word over. Hold Shift, slides it straight over. This is test font. If I take these and let's say I, not attach, is it weld? I think it's weld. If I weld these together, didn't do it that time. What I want to show you is if I take the F, I'm going to be a little bit more drastic than what you would. But when you're working with smaller fonts, let's say I moved it in like that close. And then weld. It's not doing it. Move the T over to the E. Okay. Let's weld these two. It's not doing it. Sometimes what happens is when you move the letters close together, when I go to weld it, I can't get it to do it. Sometimes when I go to weld it after I move the T close to the E or whatever letters you're using, the E, the center of the E right here will fill in solid black. If that's the case, it's because your letters are too close together. If that's the case, take your T and move it. See how if I move this over, just make it touch like that. That looks good enough. If I were to move it over, and with some fonts you'll see this, it'll, let me stop holding Shift. I don't know if you see it peek in like that, okay? Now, if I weld it, if I did that close enough, it would fill in that whole T. I think you get the idea, and I know we've all seen it. But if you ever have that issue, click Undo, Control-Z, or this Undo button up here. Just move the letters a little bit so that they're not so close. Some of them have to barely touch, especially with certain fonts. I know one of the fonts, let's see if I can do it. One of the fonts that I can do this is... What was that font? This one right here. I love glitter. So I love glitter is a popular one because you can do like little hearts with it. Gosh, I can't remember what they are now. Is it that? Yeah, so you can do a little heart. Okay. So this is a popular font to use on things. This is not a system font. It's a downloaded font on defont.com. But what I want to do is if I ungroup these and then I move so that the L and the O are lined up, the V and the O are lined up, and then the E, okay, and then I highlight them and weld them. Ugh, of course, it's not doing it. That's drastic. You would never move it in that close. But it's not gonna let me do it. Curses. Let me go back to where it's all one word. Okay, make it bigger. You know, now that I think of it, I think it's only when we use that ungroup up there. Group them back together, weld. There it goes. See how it filled that in? If it does that, it's because it's too close. You'll have to move it over. What I don't know is will it do that? Let's do an experiment live on TV. Ungroup the letters. Quickly move them together. I'm wasting your guys' time. Whoops. I held shift when I clicked on the V. That's why it did that. So I still had the L selected. Okay. So do that. Now let's regroup them and then weld. That time it did it. The reason it wasn't doing it before is because I grouped it and then welded it. So if that's the case, anyways, let me ungroup it, unweld it, ungroup it. Okay, slide your E over, highlight them all, group it, weld it. Now it's not filled in. Okay, that took forever to show you that. But I think now you get the idea. A lot of people struggle with that. I did in the beginning. Now you know. As far as anything else, I think that's gonna about cover it. I don't use Silhouette a lot, so I'm not too versed on their software. I assume they have similar methods as far as resizing or moving your letters close together and such. I hope I covered everything. There are methods of installing fonts onto Androids, iPhones. The reason I'm not going to go over that is because it really depends on which version of Android or iPhone you're using, which version of their software you're using, and how your phone is set up as far as if you have an SD card or if you use internal storage. There are ways to do it. iFont, iFont, is a popular source on the Apple Store and the Google Play Store. It's free. The thing with iFont, if you strictly want to look for new fonts, download iFont, and you will be able to find different fonts in the program itself, which you can install. As far as downloading custom fonts, that's where I'm talking about. It depends on which version you have, your whole setup, etc. But as far as fonts on your Mac or on your PC, I think we covered everything. And if you have any further questions or anything else that I can help with as far as fonts go ahead and leave a comment down below. I do read them all, and I do try to respond to every single one of them. Once again, I want to thank you for your time and subscribing to the channel, and I hope to see you guys soon. Thanks.